What do you do when the people running your business stop caring about the people keeping it alive? That question haunted Hayden Koller as he stared at the delivery performance reports stacked on his desk. Missed drop-offs, late arrivals, driver turnover higher than any other department. 14 stores across 3 states, and yet the complaints were all coming from one place, Store 8. Hayden had inherited the company 4 years ago when his father passed away. He was 39, clean-cut, and used to wearing suits, not steel-toe boots. But he'd worked hard to grow the family business, expanding beyond local deliveries to a statewide logistics chain. The company was too big now for him to know every worker by name, but he'd trusted his managers to keep things running. Lately, that trust was cracking. He stood, ran a hand through his thick brown beard, and walked to the large window of his office. From up here, everything looked calm, but numbers didn't lie. He'd already replaced 2 store managers this year for hiding failures. He couldn't afford another blind spot. Not now. "I'm going in," he muttered. He worked with HR to create a fake identity, Nick Harmon, a recently licensed temp driver hired to shadow for 2 weeks. Hayden had never met the dispatchers or drivers from Store 8 in person. It was a corporate-run location, and he'd only ever spoken to the store manager during quarterly updates. His disguise was solid dyed darker hair, thick glasses, a fake Wisconsin accent, and clothes that made him look more like someone's laid-off cousin than a CEO. He arrived at Store 8 early Monday morning. The warehouse had a tired look, chipped paint, half-lit signage, and a cracked loading dock. 2 vans already pulled out as he stepped into the break room. A woman in her late 20s with short curls and a badge that read Melanie S. looked up from the coffee machine. "You must be the new guy, Nick, right?" "Yeah, just started," he said, adjusting his glasses. "Cool, you're with Tom today. He's on Route 3. Long one?" Tom, a tall guy with a calm energy and sleeves rolled to his elbows, waved from the corner. "Hey man, hope you're ready for a workout." They headed out to the van. Tom handed him a clipboard. "We got 52 stops today. Normally it's around 30. Hayden blinked. 52. "That's a lot." Tom nodded with a dry chuckle. "Dispatcher doubled me up again, said we're short on drivers. Been that way for weeks." As they pulled onto the highway, Tom navigated the route with the precision of someone who knew every shortcut. Hayden watched closely. The guy was smart, efficient. But the stress showed he didn't touch the lunch he packed, barely drank water, and never took a break. At stop 29, Tom's phone buzzed through the Bluetooth system. "Tom, it's Lisa," a voice said sharply. "Got a change for you." "Just added 8 more stops to your route." Tom's grip on the wheel tightened. "Lisa, this is already overbooked. I've got a trainee with me too." "Don't care." Derek called out, "and no one else is available. You're the only one who knows the area. Handle it." The call ended before Tom could reply. "Is that normal?" Hayden asked, trying to keep his voice neutral. Tom sighed. "Lisa's the dispatcher. She runs the routes. If you push back, she cuts your hours. Happened to a guy last month. I've got a daughter to feed, so I keep my head down." Hayden sat quietly watching him. They finished the route after 10 hours on the road. By the end, Tom's shirt was soaked with sweat, and his eyes were bloodshot. Back at the warehouse, Lisa stood near the dispatch office. She was mid-30s, sharp cheekbones, and spoke like she was always in a hurry. "Finally," she said as Tom walked in, "you're late." "No break all day, Lisa. You added 8 extra stops," he said, keeping his voice even. Lisa scoffed. "So that's your job, don't like it, quit." Hayden stepped forward. "That's messed up." She glanced at him, uninterested. "Who are you?" "New trainee." "Then keep quiet and learn something." Tom grabbed his bag. "Let's go, Nick." As they walked out, Hayden's chest burned, the way she spoke to him, the way Tom just took it. No wonder morale was in the gutter. Good people were getting run into the ground. Back in his motel room, Hayden sat on the edge of the bed. His knees ached. He hadn't worked a day this hard since college. He picked up his phone and stared at it. He wanted to call the district manager right now. Fire Lisa on the spot. But doing that without seeing the full picture wouldn't fix anything. He needed more time, more truth, Tomorrow he'd ride again. Hayden arrived at Store 8 before dawn the next morning. Skies were still dark, and the warehouse lights flickered with the same tired hum as yesterday. He wore the same beat-up trucker cap and faded jeans, blending into the early shift fog that hung over the parking lot. Today, he was paired with someone new, Lewis. Short, wiry, early 40s, and quiet. He didn't offer a handshake, just nodded once and motioned toward the van without a word. Hayden climbed in beside him. The cab smelled faintly of old coffee and spilled motor oil. Lewis handed over the manifest. 48 stops, no reroutes, yet Hayden glanced at him. That normal for Tuesdays? Lewis tapped the steering wheel. Normal is whatever Lisa feels like making it. They drove in silence for the first few miles. Lewis clearly wasn't a talker, but Hayden didn't push. He watched. Lewis was sharp, scanned packages quickly, used a handheld scanner like it was an extension of his arm, and parked in tight alleys with barely an inch to spare. But something was off. He moved stiffly, favoring his right leg. Every time he stepped down from the van, he winced just slightly. At the fifth stop, as Hayden wrestled a bulky box out of the back, he finally asked, "You all right, man? You're limping." Lewis reached for a handcart without looking at him. "Tore my knee last winter, still waiting on the company to approve physical therapy." "They haven't," he shook his head. "I filed the report. Manager said it got lost, filed again, got told to wait. That was 5 months ago." Hayden felt his jaw tighten. "You working full-time, 50 hours a week, no benefits, classified as independent contractor." He gave a half-laugh, bitter and dry. "Independent enough to get hurt, not enough to get help." They continued in silence. At stop 17, Lewis slipped on a slick curb and caught himself against the mirror. He didn't cry out, but his knuckles turned white around the metal. "I can take the next few," Hayden said. Lewis didn't argue. By early afternoon, they were behind schedule. At a strip mall in the outskirts of town, Lewis pulled in fast and parked sideways, half over a curb. "Don't care anymore," he muttered. "They can fire me." Hayden stepped down and saw what he meant. The next delivery was to a nail salon tucked between a payday loan office and a vape shop. A hand-lettered sign on the salon door read, "Deliveries to back entrance only." The alley was blocked by a garbage truck. Hayden turned to Lewis. "You want me to run it around?" Lewis nodded, rubbing his knee. "Take the dolly." As Hayden wheeled the package around the building, he passed a man in a manager's polo standing beside a smoking dumpster. The man squinted at him. "You with Store 8? "Yeah, delivery." The man shook his head, flicking ash to the pavement. "They've been late every week for 2 months. You people don't care about anyone's time." Hayden forced a polite nod. "Understaffed, doing what we can." "Then hire better people. Last guy reeked of weed, left packages in the rain." Hayden didn't answer. He dropped off the box and made his way back. Lewis was in the driver's seat, eyes closed, head leaning against the window. When Hayden climbed in, he sat up slowly, blinking away exhaustion. "You eat today?" Hayden asked. Lewis didn't answer. "Pull over." "We'll grab something quick." Lewis hesitated. "They track the GPS. Lisa'll know we stopped. She'll live." They stopped at a gas station. Hayden bought 2 sandwiches and handed one over without asking. "You got kids?" he asked as they ate in the van. Lewis nodded. 2 boys. "High school? Your wife work?" "Passed away 3 years ago, cancer." Hayden didn't respond, just stared at the dashboard for a moment. They finished the route after dark. Back at the warehouse, Lewis shut off the engine and sat still for a moment before opening the door. Inside, Hayden saw Lisa again, pacing near the whiteboard with a tablet in hand. She spotted Lewis and frowned. "You're 90 minutes late." Lewis dropped the keys in the lockbox. "We had 48 stops. I don't care, you're supposed to figure it out." Hayden stepped forward. He slipped on a curb, hurt his leg. Maybe if the manifest wasn't overloaded. Lisa turned sharply. "You don't talk to me, temp." Hayden stared at her. "Got it." He turned to Lewis. "I'll see you tomorrow." Lewis gave a tired nod. As he walked out, Hayden noticed a girl sitting on a crate near the back entrance, scrolling on her phone. She wore the company vest but hadn't been on the routes. Her name tag read Alyssa. She looked up. You the new guy. Yeah, you shadowing Lewis. Poor guy needs a break. You work dispatch, supposed to, but Lisa says I'm too slow on the system, so now I just sort packages. You trained for dispatch. Yep, but I asked too many questions, got bumped down. Hayden raised an eyebrow. Questions like what? Why we were sending out unsafe vans? Why routes kept changing mid-shift without notice? Why we never got hazard pay during the ice storm last month? He nodded once. Thanks. That night, Hayden didn't go back to the motel. He drove to a nearby diner and sat alone in a booth, scribbling notes on a napkin. Injured driver. Reassigned dispatcher. Threats for raising concerns. Deliberate overloading. He called his assistant from a burner phone. I need full schedules, timesheets, and route logs from Store 8 for the last 60 days. Quietly. Understood. He hung up and stared out the window. The place had stopped being just mismanaged. It was broken. People were being used, ignored, and punished for speaking up. And Lisa was at the center of it. The next morning, he requested to ride with a new hire Jordan. 19. Clean shoes, nervous eyes, they only had 22 stops. Hayden noticed instantly lighter than the last 2 days. Why's your route so short? He asked as they pulled out. Jordan shrugged. Lisa said I'm still learning. She didn't want me slowing things down. Hayden leaned back. Did she give you a map? No, just the list, said to use GPS. They missed 2 stops before noon. Jordan was trying, but the system was a mess, wrong addresses, misspelled street names. No notes about gate codes or drop-off times. Back at the store, Hayden found Alyssa again, this time loading boxes into a cage. You ever train someone on route prep? Twice. Then Lisa told me to stop interfering. Why? She said it made her look bad. Hayden nodded, then walked to the back office. Lisa wasn't at her desk. Her tablet was open, a spreadsheet visible on the screen: route assignments, timestamps, driver initials. He pulled out his phone and snapped a photo, then he walked out and waited. She returned 10 minutes later with coffee. He stepped in front of the door. We need to talk. She looked up, annoyed. You again. What is it now? You're overloading experienced drivers, undertraining new ones, and assigning routes based on who you like, not what makes sense. Her eyes narrowed. You have no idea how this place runs. I do now. She crossed her arms. You're a temp. You don't run anything. Hayden reached into his jacket and pulled out his employee badge, the real one, the one with his actual name. She stared at it, then at him. He didn't raise his voice. Hayden Koller, CEO. She didn't speak. He stepped past her into the office. You're relieved. Effective immediately. Security will escort you out. You can't, I can, and I just did. He turned to the assistant manager standing nearby. Get Lewis, get Alyssa, bring them in. The man nodded, eyes wide. Lisa still hadn't moved. You put people at risk, Hayden said. You played favorites. You punished people for speaking up. That's not just bad leadership, it's negligence. She opened her mouth to protest, but he raised a hand. Don't, you're done. She stormed out. Lewis arrived a few minutes later, confusion on his face. Alyssa followed, clutching a clipboard. Hayden stood in front of them. You both deserved better. That ends today. I'm appointing a temporary team lead while I restructure this location. Lewis, if you're willing, I want you to take that role. Lewis shook his head slowly. I'm not a manager. You're the best kind, you care. He looked at Alyssa. And you're back in dispatch. Starting now, she blinked. Seriously, Hayden nodded. We'll get you trained properly, and I'll be here all week making sure it happens. He turned to the assistant manager. Start calling in coverage from nearby stores. No more double routes. No more ignored injuries. We're rebuilding this the right way. And for the first time since he stepped into Store 8, the place felt like it might finally begin to heal. By Thursday morning, Hayden had quietly pulled the operations manager from a neighboring store to temporarily oversee Store 8 while he remained embedded. Lisa was gone, but her absence hadn't magically fixed anything. The systemic damage she'd inflicted, burned out drivers, disorganized logistics, and buried morale was still smoldering under the surface. Hayden kept his cover intact with the rest of the staff, observing how each department adjusted under interim guidance. The culture hadn't shifted yet. It wasn't enough to cut off one head, he needed to rebuild the spine. That morning, he rode with Deborah, one of the senior drivers on staff. She was in her 50s, lean with a practical haircut, and carried herself like someone who didn't waste time on what didn't matter. "You've been here a while?" Hayden asked as they loaded the van. "4 years," she said, scanning barcodes with one hand, rearranging boxes with the other. "I was at the old location before they moved us here." "Things used to run tighter." "Used to," she looked at him, weighing his worth before answering. "When Henry ran dispatch, we had set zones, fixed routes, and rotating off days. Lisa came in and blew that up. Said she wanted agility, what she wanted was control." They climbed into the cab. Deborah didn't turn on music, didn't make small talk, just drove. Hayden noticed the route was poorly sequenced. Packages meant for the 5th stop were buried under 10 others. The scanner app gave inconsistent delivery windows, forcing them to double back twice within the first hour. "Ever report issues with routing?" Hayden asked. "Filed 3 complaints last year," she replied flatly. "HR forwarded them to Lisa." He didn't respond. Instead, he watched how she handled each drop, efficient, polite, thorough. At one apartment building, she even carried a large box up 5 flights without asking for help. "You don't use the dolly for stairs." "Warehouse didn't replace the last one I broke. Said it wasn't in the budget." They were halfway through the route by noon when Hayden spotted something strange. A small box meant for a commercial address had a handwritten note taped to it. "Hold for pickup, do not deliver." "Was this scanned already?" he asked. Deborah frowned. "That's weird, let me see." She checked the manifest. "It says complete." "That's not right." They drove to the listed address, a hardware store downtown. Hayden went in and asked the clerk if they'd received a package that morning. "Nope, we've been waiting on it. It's a replacement part for a busted generator." He returned to the van and handed the box to Deborah. "Someone marked it delivered before it left the warehouse." She stared at it, then shut the back doors with more force than necessary. "That's the 3rd time this month," she said. "I've told the loadout team, but they just say not our problem." Back at the warehouse that evening, Hayden didn't go into the break room. Instead, he walked to the loading dock, where 2 employees were wheeling carts of boxes into the vans for the next day. "Hey," he called to one of them. "You do the scanning too?" One of the guys looked up. Tall, early 20s, heavy hoodie despite the heat. "Nah, that's Deshawn's thing. He does the finished scans, I just pull." "Where's Deshawn?" a voice from inside the warehouse answered. "Right here." Deshawn walked out, earbuds dangling, a scanner in one hand, chewing gum slowly. "You mark packages as delivered before they leave?" Deshawn raised an eyebrow. "Sometimes, depends. If it's flagged for hold or reroute, I just mark it done so it doesn't trigger a failed delivery." Hayden stepped closer. "Even if it hasn't gone out yet?" "It's what Lisa told us to do, said it keeps the metrics clean." "You still doing it now?" Deshawn shrugged. "No one told me to stop." Hayden's expression didn't change. "Show me who else is doing it." Deshawn hesitated. "Just me, maybe one other guy." Hayden nodded once. "You're done here." Deshawn's posture shifted. "What? You're terminated. You've been falsifying delivery records." "That's theft, not policy." "I didn't come up with it, Lisa. I don't care who told you. You kept doing it after she was gone." Deshawn looked at the other guy, who stepped back silently. "Collect your things," Hayden said. Now, the warehouse fell quiet. Even the forklifts in the far corner seemed to pause. Hayden turned to the remaining worker. "You scan any packages today?" "Nope, just pull and stack." "You keep it that way. New process starts tomorrow." Everything gets verified by the route lead before it's loaded. He walked away without waiting for a response. The next morning, he met with the interim operations manager and pulled Alyssa into the office as well. She looked uncertain, still not used to being included in meetings. "I want you to build a route logic model," Hayden said. "Use actual travel times, weight limits, and delivery types. No more raw stop counts. We need a system that works in real time." Alyssa nodded, surprise flashing in her eyes. "I can do that, but I'll need access to, you'll have it." Pull whatever you need. He turned to the interim manager. Also, we're putting in weekly driver feedback sessions, not optional. I want every single driver heard. The manager jotted it down. Understood. That afternoon, Hayden joined a ride along with a part-time driver named Marcus. Early 30s, former Marine, working 2 jobs to support his mother. Marcus had never met Lisa directly, he'd only heard about her through the grapevine. But he described the same chaos: last-minute reroutes, missing packages, and unexplained shift cuts. "You ever get your hours changed without notice?" Hayden asked as they waited at a red light. "All the time. I'd show up and they'd say, 'Your shift was yesterday.'" He paused, then added, "They once scheduled me on my day off. I was out of town at a funeral." Got written up for a no-show. Hayden didn't answer right away. Instead, he studied the stop list again. 3 addresses were listed twice. "How many hours you getting this week?" 32, but I asked for 40. Hayden looked at the dashboard clock. They were already at hour 8 and still had 7 stops left. When they returned, Hayden walked straight to the scheduling office. He found a whiteboard with driver names and shift blocks, but no digital backup system. "Who handles this?" he asked. The staffer on duty looked up. "We just fill it in based on last week's template." "You tracking PTO, conflicts, overtime?" The staffer hesitated. "Sometimes, we usually just go by memory." Hayden didn't raise his voice. "That's over. I want a full audit of the last 60 days of shift logs. Send it to my office by Monday." "Yes, sir." He turned back toward the hallway and paused at the break room. Through the window, he saw Deborah sitting alone, eating from a Tupperware container. Across the room, Marcus was helping Alyssa install a new monitor near the dispatch desk. The place still looked worn, but there was movement like a body starting to breathe again after being held underwater. Back in his car, Hayden pulled out his phone and called his assistant. "Start recruiting for a permanent site leader," he said. "Someone with logistics and people management experience. Internal candidates first, but they need to have 0 tolerance for corner cutting." "Got it. Anything else?" He looked out the window. Rain had started to tap softly against the windshield. "Yeah. Tell legal to review every independent contractor classification at Store 8. We're not hiding behind loopholes anymore." He ended the call and sat for a moment. This wasn't just about one bad dispatcher. It was about a culture that let her thrive. And he'd let that culture grow while looking at spreadsheets instead of people. Not anymore. Saturday morning, Hayden stood on the edge of the loading dock, clipboard in hand, wearing the same worn flannel and work boots he'd used all week. The sun hadn't cleared the roofline yet, but the lot was already buzzing. Vans lined up in tighter rows. Routes were posted in clear printouts, not just scrawled on whiteboards. Alyssa was at her new workstation inside the dispatch office, her voice calm but firm as she gave instructions to the morning drivers. "Route 7, you're cleared. Check your seal and confirm before leaving." Marcus gave her a thumbs up as he wheeled his cart toward the bay door. Hayden stepped aside to let him pass. "You good with today's route?" "Yeah, it's tight but manageable. Stops are grouped better." "Any repeats or overlaps?" Marcus shook his head. "Nope, they actually listened this time." Hayden made a note and moved inside. The break room had been cleaned. A donation of new chairs and a working microwave from headquarters had arrived the night before. Nothing fancy. Just functional and finally respectful of the people who spent their days on the road. Lewis was in the corner, leaning over the operations binder with the interim manager. His limp hadn't improved, but he moved with more confidence. He paused when Hayden approached. "Morning," Lewis said. "We're still 2 drivers short, but we're covering with split shifts." Hayden nodded. "You still okay taking lead until we confirm the permanent hire?" Lewis closed the binder. "As long as we're not just putting a fresh coat of paint on the same problems." "We're not." Lewis looked at him a long moment, then gave a slow nod. "I believe you." Hayden moved toward the back office. Deborah was there, leaning against the filing cabinet, arms crossed, waiting. He set the clipboard down. "You asked for time this morning." She stepped forward. I've seen a lot of changes over the years, most of them cosmetic, but this—" she lifted the new route manifest. "This is the first week in a year I've finished a day without skipping lunch." Hayden waited. "I want to stay," she continued. "But I need to know this isn't just a cleanup show, that when you leave it won't go back to the way it was." "I'm not going back to headquarters," Hayden said. "Not yet. I've got 2 more stores to audit, and I've already pulled their delivery numbers. If there's anything like what I saw here, I'll handle it." Deborah nodded once. "Then I'm in." He met with the assistant manager next. The man handed over a printed copy of the new contractor classifications. "We've got 14 drivers flagged for review, some were misclassified. Legal's handling the corrections. Back pay, already in progress." Hayden tapped the folder. "Good, let them know it's not a favor, it's a correction." As the morning routes cleared out one by one, Hayden stepped back onto the dock. The air smelled of diesel and fresh coffee. There were fewer raised voices, less frantic movement, and no signs of the tension that had hung over the warehouse earlier that week. A familiar voice called behind him. Alyssa stepped out, holding a form. "Hey, got a request from the overnight sorters. They're asking for safety training. Forklift certifications are expired." "Schedule it," Hayden said. "And get them cold weather gear. Forecast says snow next week." She smiled slightly. "They'll appreciate that." He glanced toward the lot. "You ever think about managing a store full-time?" Alyssa blinked. "Me, you've got the right instincts. The system thinks you're too green, but they said the same about me when I took over my first route." She hesitated. "I'd need training, you'll get it." He handed her a card. "Call this number Monday. HR will start the process." Alyssa stared at the card, then tucked it into her pocket quickly, like it might vanish if she looked too long. As she returned inside, Hayden walked toward the van bay. He paused when he saw Jordan, the youngest driver, struggling to adjust a package strap. The kid looked exhausted but determined. "Need a hand?" Jordan looked up. "I think I got it, just slower than the others." "You'll get faster. Accuracy matters more right now." Jordan hesitated. "Can I ask something?" "Go ahead." "Why are you really here, I mean?" "You're the top guy, right?" Hayden considered his answer, then said, "Because I trusted people who stopped telling me the truth, and that's on me. I should have seen it sooner." Jordan nodded slowly. "It's better now, people actually talk to each other." Hayden clapped him on the shoulder. "Keep asking questions, that's how we fix what breaks." As the last van pulled out, Hayden returned to the dispatch office. The interim manager had just pinned the updated driver map to the corkboard. Routes were color-coded, no duplicates, no blind zones. He turned toward Hayden. "You want to hang it up here permanently?" Hayden shook his head. "No, keep it updated every week. If it stays the same too long, it means no one's listening." The manager smiled. "Fair point." Hayden made one final walk through the building. The warehouse lights had been repaired. The spare dolly rack was restocked. Even the vending machine had been refilled. He found Deborah near the back, checking the tire pressure on one of the older vans. She looked up, heading out. "I've seen what I needed to." "You didn't have to do this yourself," she said, straightening up. "I did," he replied, "because no one else was going to." She extended her hand. "Then thanks for showing up." He shook it. "For staying." Hayden stepped back into his rental car and sat quietly for a moment. The warehouse behind him hummed with motion, but none of it was frantic. It was focused. Functional. He pulled out his phone and opened the list of remaining stores. 2 more to visit, 2 more to face. He started the engine, then paused and looked at the rearview mirror, not at himself, but at the building. This wasn't polish, it wasn't optics. This was repair. Brick by brick. Person by person, and he wasn't done. Not until every worker in his company knew they mattered, not because of what they delivered, but because of who they were.